The Sega Dreamcast, Sega's last console before it went completely third party. Many people assume that the Sega Dreamcast was the reason Sega went under, but how true is this, I wonder? Did the Sega Dreamcast truly cause Sega to fail, or was Sega already so deep in the red that the Dreamcast didn't even matter? Today, I set out to find those answers. First, let me run down what the Sega Dreamcast is real quick for the uninitiated. The Sega Dreamcast was a console that launched on November 27, 1998 in Japan and on September 9, 1999 in the States. It was pretty revolutionary at the time for being the first console to use PC parts to help streamline manufacturing and being the first console to have internet capabilities out of the box. It would unfortunately only be on the market for about 2 years before in 2001 Sega announced that it would cease production of the Dreamcast. So, what happened? Why did the Dreamcast fail? Well, it's important to note that at the time, Sega was already suffering losses from their previous console, the Sega Saturn, so the company was already looking to the Dreamcast to sort of save the company, and not everyone was on board. Notably, the CEO of Sega America at the time, Tom Kalinske, left the company due to disagreements with Sega of Japan, and Isao Okawa, who would go on to become the president of Sega in May of 2000, actively thought that Sega should abandon the Dreamcast and move to third-party development. But that didn't stop Okawa from giving it his all to try and make the Dreamcast a success. Okawa was definitely a big contributor to helping the Dreamcast. He was the one who was adamant that online connectivity was the future of gaming, and wanted to make sure that every Dreamcast was shipped with some modem. And to help with sales, he gave everyone in Japan who bought a Dreamcast at launch a year's worth of internet for free. Unfortunately, the Dreamcast didn't have a stellar launch in Japan, mostly due to manufacturing shortages at the time. They weren't able to meet demand, and it negatively affected the sales. Things would start looking good for Sega once their launch in America drew $99.99 for only $199. That was the marketing push that they would use, and it certainly worked. In the States, the Dreamcast ended up selling amazingly at launch, selling over 250,000 Dreamcasts in less than 24 hours, setting a record for being the fastest selling console at the time, and within 2 weeks, it broke 500,000 units. All this success with great games like Sonic Adventure and Soul Calibur pushing the console forward would ultimately not be the saving grace Sega thought it would be. In Japan, they had already started selling the console at a loss, and although the console was selling phenomenally in the States, Peter Moore, the new president of Sega America, would go on to say this: "We had a tremendous 18 months. The Dreamcast was on fire. We really thought that we could do it, but then we had a target from Japan that said, and I can't remember the exact figures, but we had to make X hundreds of millions of dollars by the holiday season and shift X millions of units of hardware, otherwise we just couldn't sustain the business." Sega was already too far off the deep end, and unless the Dreamcast was ready to make record-breaking numbers in an insane amount of time, there was no way it was going to be able to sustain the company. And I haven't even mentioned one of the biggest contributing factors to Sega's troubles at the time: competition. Specifically, the PlayStation. The PlayStation was already a household name when the Dreamcast came out, and PlayStation was already hard at work making the second iteration of the console. The PlayStation 2 was slated to release in October of 2000, so Sega knew they had a hard deadline to make the Dreamcast big, but no cigar. So the plug was pulled in January of 2001, the Dreamcast having sold a respectable amount of 9.13 million units. So, at the end of the day, the Dreamcast was an extremely ambitious console boasting the best looking games at the time, with the added benefit of being the first online console, but it ended up being a failure. And with everything discussed today, I believe that it wasn't the fault of the Dreamcast, but the fault of the company. Sega was scrambling for success when the company was already in the red. Not to mention all the movement around of the higher-ups at the company. I don't envy anyone who was working there at the time, and it must have been an extremely stressful time for everyone involved. I want to bring extra attention back to Isao Okawa, who took over as president of the company during these turbulent times. He poured so much of his time and personal money into the system, even though he knew himself that it was probably all for naught. But even after the Dreamcast failed, he forgave the debts Sega owed him, and unfortunately passed away in 2001. So, it wasn't just because the Dreamcast was a bad console that it failed. Like most things in life, it ends up being a lot more complicated than that, but I think that the legacy of the Dreamcast lives on today, and Sega as a company is still going strong. Anyways, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you tell me what your thoughts on the Dreamcast are down below, and consider hitting the like and the subscribe button, and I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you.